Hey everybody, it's me coming at you again with another late night video, if you will. What do you guys think about our hutch? We painted it blue. Isn't it pretty? Thank you. Anyway, um, so basically this video is going to be a really quick check-in for my Black Rose Witchcraft course. And how that's going is still very, 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 very slowly. The move kind of set us back in everything, including my Black Rose Witchcraft lessons. So luckily, catching up isn't too awfully difficult. I'm yet another month behind, but this month's weeks that I'm on seem to be something that I have experience in already, and something that I can do kind of quickly as I go along. So basically I'm covering lessons 13, 14, and 15. So I'm doing 3 and 1 right now. And so lesson 13 is the Witch's Prism. 14 is discovering your magic type, and 15 is auric awareness. Now, the reason why I'm covering all of these in kind of one little bundle is because 13 and 14 didn't really require any extra exercises on my part, so I was able to just kind of catch up with those, and then you know, 16 or 15, I actually have a little bit of experience in, so I can go ahead and discuss that without actually doing the exercise yet. So basically, lesson 13, the Witch's Prism, is all about the chakras and how they can relate to the 3 selves. Now, if you guys haven't watched my previous lesson vlogs, the 3 selves is kind of a concept in which, our souls are split, and our souls are made up of 3 different spirit types. You have fetch, and then you have the talker, and then you have the holy daemon. Now, the holy daemon is more like your higher self, and your talker is like your it, basically, or not your id, but you got this mixed up. Your talker is like your conscious, and your conscious self, basically, and then fetch is like your id, your primal self. Now, basically, the prism is how those 3 selves interact with and relate to the chakras. So, if you're looking at a chakra picture, or chart, if you will, or as I like to call them, maps. If you're looking at a chakra map, fetch is based in your root chakras, and fetch is, again, relative to the root chakras, the more intuitive and the more primal chakras. Whereas talker kind of centers in the stomach area, and, your solar plexus, and how you go about your day and the decisions you make during the day, and your conscious life. And then the holy daemon, takes over, the top chakras, dealing with, psychic awareness and awareness to deity. So that's basically how they kind of interact in a nutshell, and, all of that. And there's a whole, because that lesson 13 is at the beginning of a month, there's a whole huge audio, not huge, but like a 30-minute audio track to listen to Devin, one of the teachers of Black Rose Witchcraft, discuss, the different functions of the chakras and how they interact. And also, he talks a lot about lesson 14, which is, well, not lesson 14 in general, but, in a general, or specifically, but in a general sense. He discusses this whole month's lesson, which is basically getting to know yourself psychically. So, lesson 14 specifically is discovering your psychic type. There are no exercises for this. Basically, they gave us a list of different psychic abilities. Now, abilities can be in three different categories, I guess. You have your receptive, you have your projective, and then you have your spiritual. So the difference between those, obviously, receptive is receiving, and perceptive or projective is, projecting, making changes to your environment. And then, spiritual is a little bit different, and I'll discuss that with you. So I don't typically like to talk about, my psychic abilities in public, because it's kind of a touchy thing for me. Like, it's kind of a thing that I'm like, ugh, like, my friends definitely know that I've been working on my awareness and everything for years. And some family members kind of know, but I don't generally talk about it because that's kind of something that most people kind of get freaked out about, and even if somebody goes to a psychic and pays them for, a fortune, or, somebody goes to a medium and pays them for a session, it's a little bit different, I mean, if that's entertainment, it's kind of, somebody can go to that and not really completely understand it or believe it. And so I don't like to talk about this kind of stuff a lot, but basically I did have quite a few things that I've experienced on the list. Some things I've mentioned on my channel before. My biggest is clairaudience. Like, I hear things all the time. I have like this, if I know if something's about to happen that's kind of like ghostly, or if something's trying to get into contact with me, I'll hear ringing in my ears. So that happens a lot, and I recognize that a lot. And I've also heard voices. I used to hear voices all the time at my mom's old place when I lived there. And yeah, sometimes things call out my name and try to get my attention, and it's just, I do have that's one of my strongest suits, is hearing things, I guess. And also hearing just my inner voice. I've been talking to my spirit guides without ever really knowing who they were, or what they were, since I was very young. So I've always had a strong inner voice. And I think that has a lot to do with clairaudience as well. And I recognize, later in life now, that, it's no wonder that I have, a decent clairaudience comes so easily to me, because, my power totem is an owl, my spirit guide also comes to me as an owl a lot. So it's pretty interesting, because the use of echolocation, it's one of those animals that, I don't know, I just always found it kind of interesting. But, so clairaudience, obviously, some clairvoyance, just seeing, different things in life, and it's always out of the corner of your eye, so I don't really rely on that as much, or put it into practice as much. But, that is definitely one. And then empathy. I've always been kind of empathic to people, and animals especially, and even plants, and so that's always been something. And then psychometry. That's what it was. So I think not too long ago I did that exercise in which we had to practice psychometry specifically. And you know, I didn't really realize that I had such a knack for that, or that I had sensitivity to, I've always held the belief that everything we do um, leaves some kind of fingerprint, whether it be physical or spiritual or energetic. So I've always believed that items, especially depending on what kind or what material the item is, can kind of absorb or collect these kind of um, spiritual or energetic fingerprints, basically. So one of the exercises that I did not too long ago, some of you might remember the video, is in which I had to borrow an item from somebody, or three items from someone is what they asked for, but I was only able to borrow one. And I had to kind of meditate with it and try and figure out what exactly I could get off of the item just by feeling the energies and all that nice stuff. Well, I borrowed an item from Bear, Ravenflower's husband, and you guys can go back and check out that lessons video. But basically, yeah, I did a lot better than what I thought I would, and so that was pretty interesting. Josh is in the kitchen dancing. No one can see you. But so yeah, definitely psychometry is something that I've recently learned I have a knack for, and that I have, kind of tried to personally put into a practice. So those are my receptives. Now, as far as projectives, it's a little. What are you doing? It's a little different. Projectives are a little bit different to think about. One of the most popular. Really? I was trying to pick your ear. Yeah. One of the most popular psychic abilities that's pretty well known, especially in the Hollywood sense, is telekinesis. You think, again, you have to think of projective abilities as changing your environment, basically, whether it be physically or whatever. So telekinesis is a big one that a lot of people know about, and that's, obviously affecting your physical environment around you. So telekinesis, a lot of people automatically think of moving things with your mind, but you also have to think of it as something not so literal. So obviously there's moving things with your mind, there's bending spoons, but you can also think of it as simple as changing the temperature in a room, or changing you know the the sensation, kind of, I guess. Yeah, changing the temperature, the physical temperature would be a big one. But there's something else that also kind of gets tied in with telekinesis, which I believe all of us as witches especially put into practice a lot, and that's psychokinesis. Now, psychokinesis is the ability to make change in your environment through basically will perception. So, a lot of people also call it projecting, literally projecting. You're projecting, your will out into the world or into your environment. And the reason why I say a lot of us put this into practice a lot is because that's spell work, basically. We're using that ability to cause change in our environment and in our lives for whatever reason. So that's definitely something that I had to add to my list. And let's see, what else do we have? Telepathy is another big one, and telepathy is basically the sending and receiving messages without needing any of the five senses. So basically, I often try and kind of put into people's minds while we're driving down the road. Really, Josh? I often try and put in people's mind, okay, you want to switch lanes, especially on the highway. I try and convince people with my mind, you want to switch lanes, like, get out of my way. And Josh knows because I think he sometimes see me, like, I'll even get as far as, like, trying to put myself mentally in their shoes, kind of like putting myself in their place, and like I'll like act like I'm flipping the turn signal. So I try to do that a lot.
Don't forget to watch Chasing Coral on Netflix.
Yes, we know, Josh. Don't forget to watch Chasing Coral on Netflix. I'll mention that again later, and I'll explain that a bit before we go. But so yeah, I do that a lot. Sometimes it's very. I've recently started practicing that, and sometimes it's effective. Honestly, I think 7 times out of 10, 7 or 8 times out of 10, it's effective. Um, so yeah, those are definitely my projective abilities. Now, your spiritual psychic abilities, he had 3 listed. He had uh, mediumship, channeling, and automatic writing. Now, channeling, I actually feel absolutely like I don't like it. I'm terrified of it. I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. Um, that's just me personally. So channeling is basically um, using or your body being used as a conduit, basically, or a puppet in a way, for uh, a deity or a spirit of a spiritual being of some sort. So a lot of, it's really popular in voodoo, uh, and also really popular in a lot of different witchcraft traditions, including the more traditional traditions. So, drawing down the moon, and, your traditionally your priest and your priestess would channel basically the gods, and, the gods would communicate through them. Now, I do believe that at some point we are going to channel, deities. But I don't believe that it's necessarily a good thing to literally channel spirits willy nilly. And, I don't know. Like, in a way, I'm a spiritual germaphobe. Like, I don't know. I just don't like. I don't feel comfortable pulling into myself like different things, and I already do enough of that as an empath, and I don't like it. Like, I have literally mastered the art of shielding. But that's basically channeling, and automatic writing is kind of the same thing, only they don't speak, orally through you, they just write. Now, mediumship. I don't like calling myself a medium, but I definitely see some signs, especially later in life, that it runs in the family. Um, like dreaming of deceased relatives and having conversations with them, and obviously seeing and hearing, um, you know, spiritual entities um, in life. So I'm definitely accepting that term, but it didn't occur to me that it could just be, that it was as rare as what it is. So, like my mom, I've always said, like, that woman's a medium. Like, there's some points where I want to say that bitch is a witch. But, she doesn't recognize herself as such, so, I don't call her that. But, a medium, definitely, and I've even mentioned it to her, like, you should probably put that into practice because, yeah, but, anyway, so I checked that off on my list as well. So basically, lesson 14 was going through the list and just kind of recognizing what you could have, and what kind of psychic traits you might have. So that's basically all that was. So, then it goes on in lesson 14, and, they discuss psychic personalities. like basically what types of personalities are more attuned to psychic phenomenon. And usually it's your extroverts. And I think that's really interesting because a lot of people wouldn't, I think if you were normally to ask people, which do you think is more, which people do you think are more likely to experience these kind of phenomenons? I think most people, or at least I, at first was thinking introverts would, because they're more internally attuned and all of that. But it's actually they stay extroverts, which then I got to thinking, well, that kind of makes sense because extroverts are, I figured because they are more interactive with other energies, other people. And so why not, because psychic abilities are in some sense a way of communication, from the other worlds. So why not? That actually does make sense. And then Devin went on to explain that it's also because they're more likely to communicate about psychic phenomenon and more likely to embrace it, basically, which I found pretty interesting. So that's basically lesson 14. And so lesson 15 was all about the aura and auric awareness. Now, I really want to pick this up and, embrace how important auras are and how often we experience working with auras and we don't even know it. So, a big thing that I started putting into practice as soon as I started recognizing my empathic abilities and auras. I rarely see auras. First of all, let me say that I rarely do. Sometimes I do, but most of the time I do not. I can once I'm in a certain like apartment or my mom's house, for example, had so much energy inside of it that you could see the energy on the floor. It looked a lot like heat almost. If you look in the distance during the summer and you look down the street a ways while you're in the car and you can kind of see the heat rising off the street. It looked very similar to that, only it didn't rise. It stayed like level with the floor and like moved across the floor. And that was just because the home had an aura, it had an energy of itself. It's an old house. But I have also seen some people's auras before, and yeah, usually it was without really trying to look. But they're pretty interesting. Now, the biggest thing, again, like I said, I started practicing shielding pretty early, when I found out or started really experiencing my empathic nature. Um, you can change your aura, basically. You can use your aura for everything from defense to receptiveness, even as weapons. You can use your aura as a weapon. And I really liked how Devin covered that in this lesson, because a lot of people, I think, it's just a simple matter of visualizing, and I don't think that people completely really think about it as this is you, this is part of you, that you're you know visualizing change. And I think that if you have a better understanding of that, like with everything else in the world, you can get better at it. So, some things were discussed that I've put into practice like forever. I've mentioned in a live video before, I think, that I was giggled at by some fellow witches because I said, when you shield yourself, put up a concrete wall, a brick wall, or if you're shielding yourself against a spell or something that you think is going to be more projectile towards you, use a marshmallow coating, picture it being like a marshmallow coating and, slow that shit down. Um, but I also think that it's important to realize that it can be used offensively as well, in the sense that, if you have a visitor or if somebody's just kind of hanging around you that's making you uncomfortable, you can turn your aura into nail heads. Nail heads is one that I use, or broken glass. Devin, I believe, described like porcupine needles, and which I loved. And it just kind of makes people uncomfortable, and it makes them want to kind of like get the fuck away from you. So it really helps out a lot. And you can tell a lot about a person just according to the vibes they give off, because the vibes they get off, a lot of us kind of understand that. You can tell if someone's sick, you can tell if they're shady, you can tell if they are you know not to be trusted or whatever. So I just found it really interesting that these things that he was explaining, have I've been using for years and years and years, without even really realizing, like, obviously I read and got the heads up about them, but, I didn't realize that this was something that every witch did, you know, but anyway. So I digress. I hope you guys are liking these little, tidbits and these little check-ins. Like I said, these three were together because they didn't require any exercises, didn't require any crazy rituals or anything. And it was just something I could kind of talk about and chat about. If you guys have any questions about my abilities, or any questions about how you can better attune to your abilities, feel free to send me a message. You can either send me a message on YouTube, or shoot me an email. My link is in the description box. So yeah, I hope you guys all have a really good Lunesta.
Fiesta.
Lunesta. Or Lunasa. Anyway. And have a good weekend. Blessed be, guys.